to today's class. So in today's class, we are going to be solving 2025 Biology Paper 1 multiple choice questions. So again, this paper is 40 marks and you are required to answer it in not more than 50 minutes. So these are multiple choice questions, meaning the answers will be there. You just have to pick which one is correct. So before I start, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, share and comment if you have any questions on this topic or any other topic. So to begin, question 1 is saying a student used a light microscope to observe onion cells. The power of the ocular lens was 10 times and the objective lens was 20 times. The magnification of onion cell is A 10 times, B 20 times, C 30 times, and D 200 times. So here, what you need to know is just the magnification formula. So what is the magnification formula? So the magnification formula is you multiply the ocular lens. So you multiply the ocular lens times the what? The objective length. So in our case, we are supposed to multiply 10 times 20 so that we find our answer to be 200x or 200 times. Moving on to question 2, what is the correct level of organization for the skin? So we know that there are a lot of level of organization. We have cells. When similar cells come together, they form tissues. When similar tissue join together, they form what is known as an organ. Then multiple organs working together, they form what is known as a system. We have the circulatory system, respiratory system, all those systems. Then when systems join together, they form what is known as an organism. So now where does the skin fall under? So if we look at the skin, you can find that the skin is made up of multiple cells and tissues. So meaning if the cell is made up of multiple cells and tissues, we are going to call it an organ because it is made up of similar tissues working together. So here our answer is organ, not organelle. Organelles are small, tiny structures which are found inside the cell. Then when we talk about the system, I've explained the tissue. Moving on to our question 3. So our question 3 is saying the following diagram shows a setup to demonstrate osmosis. The Viking tube represents the plant cell. So here we have the Viking tube, which is this one. So this one is the Viking tube. Which setup would demonstrate plasmolysis? So you have to understand first what is plasmolysis before answering. So remember, plasmolysis, I said, this is the shrinkage of the cell membrane away from the what? From the cell in plants when a plant is placed in hypertonic solution. So whenever a plant cell is placed in hypertonic solution, it shrinks away from the what? From the cell membrane. Why? Because water leaves the cell into the what? Into the solution, because the solution has a higher concentration than the cells. Yeah. So now, after understanding what plasmolysis is, now you are going to check the what? The diagram. So we have A. So A, inside the Viking tube, we have water. Then outside we have what? Sugar solution. So whenever we know that sugar is both inside and outside what? The cell. That is what. Okay, so we're saying that the cell contains salt, sugar, and water in the vacuum. But here we have two solutions. So one is inside the vacuum tubing, which is demonstrating osmosis. Then outside you have sugar solution. So whenever we have sugar and water, for example, in our A, water will move from the vacuum tubing into the sugar solution. Why? Because in the sugar solution, there is little amount of water. It is highly concentrated. Therefore, it is known as an hypertonic solution. So A, water will move from the vacuum tubing into the solution, which therefore will demonstrate what is known as plasmolysis. When water is moving away from the cell will start to shrink. So our correct answer is A. Why is B low? We have distilled water inside and also distilled water outside. So here you can see that here the solution is balanced. This solution is what is known as the isotonic solution. Then when we talk about sugar solution and distilled water outside, this is the opposite of A. So meaning here water won't move outside the cell, but it will move inside the cell, causing the cell to swell. Then D is the same as B. Nothing will happen because the sugar solution are equal in and outside the cell. Moving on to question 4. Which of the following shows the correct region of action and condition for the enzyme trypsin? So here they are talking about the enzyme trypsin. So what does trypsin do? So trypsin, this is the enzyme which is produced by the pancreas in order to digest proteins. So remember, trypsin does not work in the stomach because it works in a basic condition like the ileum. So here don't get confused because trypsin digests proteins that no, it works also in the stomach. No, trypsin works in the ileum or the small intestine because the pH there is alkaline. So here our answer is B. 4 solutions were tested for the presence of protein, starch, and glucose. The following table shows the results obtained. Which result shows presence of protein and glucose but not starch? So this is an experiment where they were testing now the presence of starch, proteins, or glucose. So we know that whenever we are testing the presence of starch, we use what? Iodine. Whenever we are testing for presence of proteins, we use the we use Mhm. So the Billet test is for proteins, then the Benedict test is for glucose. So you have to know all these tests. I think there is a video on my channel where I've explained all the types of tests which involve starch, proteins, glucose, lipids, and the other. So here we know that the Billet test tests for what? For proteins. Now, how can you know that there is presence of proteins and proteins are absent? Because the question is asking us to show the presence of what? Of proteins and glucose. Then we have to show the absence of starch. So now we'll start with the presence of proteins. So whenever there is presence of proteins, remember the Billet test will turn purple. If it's blue, meaning there is absence of proteins. So meaning A and B already they are wrong. So this is how you can solve MCQ fast. So now we have two answers, C and D. So now which one is the correct? You go on now to glucose. So glucose is measured by the Benedict test. So for us to know that there is glucose, the Benedict test has to turn what? Orange. Yeah. So if the Benedict test turn orange, meaning there is the presence of what? Glucose. If it remains blue, meaning the glucose is absent. So meaning we have to cancel where there is blue and blue. So if we have cancelled blue and blue, meaning we are remaining with C, which is our answer. So whenever you put proteins in a burette test, it will turn purple. Whenever you put iodine test for starch, it has to turn blue black. If it is brown, meaning there is absence of starch. Then when the Benedict test turn orange, meaning there is presence of what? Glucose. Yeah. Moving on to question 6. So question 6 is saying, which of the following nutritional disorder can be caused by lack of calcium in the diet? So you see that questions they repeat. If you see this question, we already covered it in my first class where I talked about the type of nutrients and the diseases they cause, where we talked about rickets and anemia. So here now they're asking specifically for calcium. So if you remember, I told you that calcium is responsible for bone formation. So whenever you lack calcium, just think of a condition which has to involve the bones. So on our option there we have A, constipation, B, heart disease, C, rickets, D, scurvy. So when we look at scurvy, this is a vitamin C deficiency disease. So meaning here our D is wrong. Then when you look at a heart disease, so a heart disease cannot be caused by lack of calcium. And also a constipation. Constipation also cannot be caused by lack of calcium, but by lack of dietary fibers. So which leaves our answer to be C. So rickets is the disease which is caused by lack of calcium in the diet. Question 7. The diagram shows the shapes of the cell in a section of the leaf. So the leaf comes almost everywhere. So we are saying that this diagram shows a structure of a leaf. So which cell contains chloroplast? So which cell contains chloroplast? So I told you that the cells which contains chloroplast are the cells which are what? Columns, which are tall in short. So we have H. So what is H? So H is what is known as the upper epidermis. Then I, we have the what? The palisade mesophyll layer. Then we have K, which is the what? The spongy mesophyll layer. Then we have J, which is the stomata. So the stomata allows the entry of carbon dioxide and the exit of oxygen during photosynthesis. Then we said K facilitates the what? The diffusion of what? Of substances such as carbon dioxide and oxygen. Then when you come to I has high concentration of what? Chloroplast. Then when we talk about the upper epidermis, so the upper epidermis it contains a thick wax which is responsible for maximum absorption of or maximum penetration of light and reduces the rate of transpiration. So meaning H does not have what? chloroplast because its function is to facilitate what? So its function is to facilitate the penetration of light and also reduction in what? In transpiration. So when you talk about now which part contains high concentration of chloroplast, so H do not contain, as I am from explaining why it does not contain chloroplast. Then when you come to I, this is the main part responsible for photosynthesis. So when you look at I, this part is responsible for photosynthesis because it contains a high concentration of what? Of chloroplast. Then K, it also contains chloroplast, but it is not high compared to what? To I. Then also J has somewhat chloroplast, but which H does not contain any chloroplast. So therefore our answer is C. I, J, and K are the structures which contains what? The chloroplast. Moving on to question 8. The diagram shows the structure of a rhizopus. So here we are seeing the structure of a rhizopus. Identify the labeled structure L and M. So what is L? So L is what is known as the hypha. So the hypha, this is responsible for secreting digestive enzymes on the what? On the substrate. Then we have the sporangiform. So the sporangiform, which is this vertical, which this horizontal line, which is M, it represents what? The sporangiform, whilst I represents the what? The hypha. B is wrong because H is not the substrate. H is the sporangiform. So meaning all these questions are wrong. Yeah. So moving on to question 9. So question 9 is showing us the diagram of a molar teeth. Which two characteristics in the diagram could be used to identify the tooth? So which two characteristics in the diagram could be used to identify the tooth? Having a sharp chisel shape and one root. B, a sharp chisel shape and two roots. C, ridges and one root. D, ridges and two roots. So first you have to know the function of the tooth which we are seeing here. So this tooth which you are seeing here is a molar. And what are molars used for? So molar are used for chewing and grinding. So something which is used for chewing and grinding, if you use your common sense, you have to know that it has a what? It needs to have a flat what? Surface for chewing. So meaning when you look at A, which has a sharp chisel and one root, B a sharp chisel and two roots. So A and B, they are not describing the molar, but they are describing teeth which are used for biting and cutting. Why are we saying so? Because having a sharp chisel will be used to what? To cut something. So meaning A and B are wrong. They are not representing our image here, which is the molar. Then moving on to C and D, ridges and one root. Ridges and two roots. So a molar has two roots. So this is what you need to remember. A molar has two roots. This one you are seeing here, which are used to attach the molar to what? To the gums. So therefore our answer here is D. Ridges and two roots. Moving on to question 10. So question 10 is saying, which of the following is an energy-rich carbohydrate stored in the liver and muscle cell? So a carbohydrates, we know we have glucose as carbohydrates. Now here is where you have to understand it. So whenever they are saying high energy rich carbohydrate stored, so meaning they are asking for the storage of carbohydrates or storage of glucose. So whenever you hear the storage of glucose, remember there's two storages. We have glycogen and starch. These are the two storage of glucose. One is in animals, one is in plant. So if you look at starch, the storage for glucose in plants, it is in starch. So starch is wrong because liver and muscle, we are talking about an animal, a human. So meaning our storage for human is glycogen, which is C. Then why is B wrong? Glucose is not a storage form. Glucose is the primary form of the food. Then when you talk about cellulose, so cellulose is needed for what? For the cell wall, not the storage, but the formation and the formation of the cell wall is cellulose is responsible for the formation of the cell wall. Question 11. Which of the following is a characteristic of emphysema? So emphysema, this is a condition which involves the lungs. So in emphysema, we have the destruction of the alveolar duct. So here the alveolar duct get destroyed. So if you want to understand more on emphysema or the diseases in human beings, go to my channel and watch the video on health. You find I've explained all these topics. So we are saying that whenever you have destruction of the alveoli, just know that it is emphysema. Then when we have inflammation of the bronchioles, this is what? Asthma. So in asthma, your airway becomes hyperactive. Therefore, they swell, causing inflammation. And also the bronchioles constrict in asthma, causing that difficulty in breathing. Then when we look at C, growth of tumor in the lungs, this is cancer. So our answer here is B, which is the destruction of the alveoli. Question 12. Which of the following elements has the greatest law in energy storage and transfer in living organisms? So they're asking us on these nutrients, which among these nutrients has the greatest law in the energy storage? We know that the energy storage is known as the ATP, adenotriphosphate. So adenosine triphosphate is made from phosphorus, like the name says, adenotriphosphate. It is made up of 3 phosphate molecules, not the other one. Now, why are the other one long? We said calcium is responsible in the formation of bone and mineralization. Magnesium is used as a cofactor in some enzymes. Then when we talk about oxygen, oxygen is responsible for energy production, not storage or transfer. Which of the following diseases is caused by stichosoma? So stichosoma, this is a bacteria, or this is a parasite, which is responsible for causing bilharzia. Others may know it as stochiomiasis. So stochiomiasis is a type of disease caused by a bacteria known as stichosoma, which lives in livers. Yeah. Then when we talk about cholera is caused by Vibrio cholerae. Then AIDS, we know it is caused by the human immunodeficiency virus. Yeah. So here, the answer is B, bilharzia. Then tuberculosis is caused by mycobacterium. Yeah. So you have to study the topic health and diseases. It comes just like you have seen here. Question 14. What type of immunity do babies obtain from the mother through breastfeeding? So what type of immunity can a baby get from a mother through breastfeeding? A. Artificial active immunity. B. Artificial passive immunity. C. Natural active immunity. D. Natural passive immunity. So, how can we know? So, we'll start with A. Artificial active immunity. So, artificial active immunity, this is a type of immunity which you receive through vaccines. So whenever a baby is injected with a vaccine, they receive what is known as artificial active immunity. Then when we talk about the active passive immunity, so active passive immunity, this is a type of immunity where you inject the baby with a pre what or a dead bacteria so that the child can have a what passive, or in short we can say this is where now you inject the baby with preformed antibodies or antitoxin to help fight what the disease. Then when we talk about natural active immunity, so natural active immunity. This is a type of immunity which you acquire when you expose yourself to a pathogen. Once you expose yourself to a pathogen, you develop what is known as natural active immunity, which will activate your immune system. Then when we talk about the natural passive immunity, D, which is the correct answer. This is a type of immunity now which you get from your mother via breastfeeding. We know that some antibodies can be present in milk. So therefore milk can provide what is known as natural passive immunity. Moving on to question 15. The diagram shows the stem of a plant whose bark has been removed. So we can see here, this is a plant whose bark has been removed. So now the question is, how is transport in the plant affected? So how is transport affected in this plant when you remove the what? The bark. So you have to understand here first the structure of what? The stem. So we know that in the stem, at the far end in the back, it contains what are known as phloem tissues. So the phloem tissues are responsible for transporting amino acid and sucrose from the leaf to the roots. Remember I told you in plants, food is made from the leaves, then it starts going what? Down to the roots. So if the bark is removed, meaning the phloem tissue will also be removed. Therefore, food won't reach what? The roots. Food like amino acid and sucrose. But since the xylem tissue, which transports water, is located inside the what? The stem, it won't be affected. So therefore, water will just pass through uninterrupted. So looking at the answer, we have A, amino acid and sucrose cannot pass to the leaves. This is wrong. A is wrong. Why is A wrong? Because the amino acid don't move from the roots to the leaves, but they move from the what? From the leaves to the roots. B, amino acid and sucrose cannot pass to the roots. correct. So our answer is B. Why is C wrong? Water cannot pass to the ribs. Water cannot pass to the roots. These two answers are wrong because water can pass to the what? To the leaves and what? To the roots. Because the xylem is not affected, but the phloem tissue is the one which is affected. Moving on to question 16. The diagram shows blood and its composition. Which component of blood represents the phagocyte? So here on the diagram, we have how many cells? We have 4 types of cells, and they're asking us to name the component that represents the phagocyte. So remember, I told you that the phagocyte have one characteristics which differentiate them from the lymphocytes, the erythrocytes, and other white blood cells and red blood cells. So if we identify, we'll start with A. So A is representing tiny dots which you can see here. So these tiny dots here are what are known as platelets. So we represent them with P. So A represents the platelets, which is P. The platelets are responsible for what? For blood clotting. Whenever you injure yourself, for blood to stop, the platelets are the ones which are involved. Then when you look at C, so C there, you can see that C has a biconcave shape, which is representing what? Red blood cells or erythrocytes. So these are erythrocytes. Then moving on to B. So B is representing now the liquid part of blood. So the liquid part of blood is known as the plasma, the blood plasma part. Then finally, our D part with a lobed nucleus. So you can see this part as a lobed nucleus, and we say that the only cell with a lobed nucleus are the phagocytes because they eat and digest the bacteria. So that's why they have a lobed nucleus. Question 17. Which chamber of the heart would be the first to receive nicotine absorbed into the blood in the lungs of a cigarette smoker? So we know that nicotine basically affects the lungs because you inhale the air. So now which blood will receive it first? So the first blood to receive the first chamber of the heart which will receive the nicotine absorbed into the blood are the what? The left atrium. Why are we saying the left atrium? So remember, nicotine enters, then it goes to the lungs. Then the right ventricle brings deoxygenated blood to the what? To the lungs. The right ventricle. Then after the blood reaches the lung, it gets oxygen is added to it and it becomes oxygenated blood. But when there is nicotine there, nicotine will also be mixed together with what? The oxygenated blood and taken back to the left atrium before going to the left ventricle. So meaning this right atrium and ventricle are wrong. They transport deoxygenated blood to the what? To the lungs. Then the left atrium is the first chamber of the heart to receive the oxygenated blood from the lungs. That is why we are saying it is the first chamber which will receive nicotine if it is in the blood. Moving on to question 18. The diagram shows a kidney and blood vessels associated with it. 1. Vessel X contains more urea than Y. 2. Vessel Y contains urine. 3. Vessel X contains more oxygen than Y. Which of the statements 1, 2, or 3 are correct. So here they're asking us now to label the diagram. So you can't answer this question minus you labeling the parts which have been given. So if you look carefully, you can see an arrow going into the what? Into the kidney. So that arrow going to the kidney represents blood coming to the kidney. And what artery, what blood vessel brings blood to the kidney? It is the what? The renal artery. So X is the renal artery. Then what is Y? So if X is the renal artery, meaning our Y is our what? Renal vein. Why? Because it takes out deoxygenated blood to the what? To the lungs. Then the other one is the ureter, which transports what? Urine to the gallbladder. So now here, which statement is correct? 1 only, B 1 and 3, C 2 and 3, D 3 only. So we said X brings what? Oxygen to the earth. So meaning vessel X should contain more oxygen than Y. Why? Because X brings oxygenated blood to the lungs. So 3 is correct. Vessel Y contains urine. Wrong. Vessel Y does not contain urine. Why are we saying vessel Y does not contain urine? Vessel Y is responsible for transporting deoxygenated blood to the what? To the lung. Vessel X contains more urea than Y. Correct. Vessel X contains more urea than Y. So therefore our answer here is what? Is B. 1 and 3. Moving on to question 19. Yeah, moving on to question 19. What changes takes place in the diameter of the arteries near the skin and urine production in the kidneys when core temperature of the body increases above normal? What changes takes place to the diameter of the arteries near the skin and urine production in the kidneys when the core temperature of the body increases above normal? So here they are saying that when your body temperature rises, how does your body handle this situation? They are talking about the differences now which occurs in the arterioles and urine production. How is urine affected and how are the arteries affected? So remember, whenever your body is hot, your diameter of the arteries will do what? It will increase. It will undergo what is known as vasodilatation. What is vasodilatation? This is expanding of the blood vessels so that blood can be directed to other parts of the body that needs it, therefore reducing what? The hotness. Then now how does urine production get affected? So remember, when it's too hot, you tend to sweat a lot. So when you are sweating a lot, you are losing a lot of water in your body. Therefore, your brain will release a hormone which is known as antidiuretic hormone, which will help us to reduce the what? The formation of urine, because it's too hot and you are losing a lot of water through sweat. So you cannot also lose water through urine. So therefore, the water that you lose through urine will be reduced by the hormone known as ADH. So here our answer is C. The diameter of the arteries will increase, vasodilatation, and the urine production will decrease. I've explained why the urine production decreases. So you have to understand the reason behind the answer. If you just memorize the answer, you won't solve if they change the question. Question 20. Which substances increases the blood sugar levels when a person is frightened? Which substance increases the blood sugar levels when the person is frightened? So here, the keyword which you need to look at is frightened. What hormone is released whenever you are frightened? So remember, I talked a lot on this topic. I said the hormone which is produced whenever you are frightened is known as adrenaline, fight or flight hormone. It is released from the adrenal cortex. This will cause an increase in blood sugar so that you have a lot of energy. We know that blood sugar is responsible for production of energy via the process of respiration. So if we increase blood sugar levels, therefore also the process of respiration will increase, therefore leading to you having a lot of energy. That's why people are scared, they learn a lot. Yeah, because adrenaline is high and the energy production is high. Whew. Question 21. The diagram shows part of the human brain. Which part controls breathing rate and regulates blood pressure? So, before identifying the part which is